All right, howdy y'all, and welcome back to the shed. So in this episode we're going to go over some system maintenance, and we're going to cover everything from solar panel cleaning and checking the PV wiring and making sure that there's no worn out spots, and the MC4 connectors. We'll do a brief overview of that. We'll do a complete very in-depth, as far as I'm concerned, maintenance routine on the inverter controller, your all-in-one unit, and also the circuit breaker panel here. And then we'll do some brief overview of the other aspects as far as, like I said before, our panel maintenance and battery maintenance also. We're going to be starting out with cleaning the panels, and I want to say that this is the way I do it. I have a smaller system, and my panels are on top of a pergola, so it's very easy for me to climb up on a ladder and get up on the pergola and do the cleaning. Now, if it was on a roof or something of that nature, I think it would be a different scenario, to where I would use like a long-handled broom, or if it was too steep of a roof, I may even rent some equipment or like a man lift or something like that, or just have somebody else do it. You know, safety is always super important in my world. None of us can afford to get hurt. It really can be a huge setback. So one thing I do want to point out about doing this is a time-consuming task. You need to set a day aside for all of this, if not a weekend aside. We're going to be cleaning panels, we're going to be doing battery maintenance, we're going to be doing controller and circuit breaker panel maintenance, tightening lugs, checking specs, there's repairs to be made. You'll see all of this in the video. So why don't we just go ahead and get started. We're going to take off, we're going to do some panel maintenance first, and then we'll move from there. We'll do controller and circuit panel maintenance, and then we'll do some battery maintenance and a summary at the end. So thanks for checking in, you guys. This video is going to be pretty freaking awesome and well worth the watch.
Jesus, Gary, you scared the shit out of me.
Haha!
I didn't realize you were there.
You're going to be on camera here in a minute.
Oh, it's a good thing I have my shirt on. Came out without it.
Okay, so in order to clean my panels, what I do is I climb up here on my pergola, and I actually use just regular old dish soap and some water and a mop. So let's go ahead and get her wet first, and then we'll get a little soap in there, and then we'll mop it down and rinse it off, and that's about it. Okay, so that's really that simple. Now, I do recommend just doing it when it's early in the morning, there's no sun on them, or if it's late in the evening like I am, or later in the evening when there's no sun on them but it's still light outside, so that way the soap doesn't tend to dry up too quickly and stick. Now, I suppose there's going to be some water drops on here when it dries out, and I could have squeegeed it off, but frankly I don't have a squeegee and I think it's going to be fine. So anyways, quick and easy on that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next segment, which could be panel maintenance. Okay, so for wider maintenance underneath the panels, I basically come in, I take a look at where everything is kind of going into the channels and wire tied. I'm not going to take you through the whole gamut, but I look for abrasion marks on the wire. I also go through and I check out things like the MC4, see if I can zoom in on that. A lot of crawling around, so I didn't film any of this. I check on the MC4s, wherever they may be. With the panels off, I open them up and I take a look at, see if there's any corrosion in there, no loose connections, kind of tug them around a little bit and put them back together. I do have a little bit of wire mess over there I need to straighten up yet. But overall, this all looks good underneath, and we're tidy. I don't see any abrasions on the cables, and we're tucked away real clean. Next thing we're going to move on to is actually cleaning out the controller and our circuit breaker panel, which is really straightforward, but there's a little bit to it. And we're also going to go in there and we're going to check all of our terminals and make sure they're up to specs and they're torqued properly and everything else. This is like a full maintenance gig that we should be doing every couple, no more than 4 months apart from each other, in my opinion. I'm at about 3 months on this one right now, so we're going to go ahead and get a start on it. Now, you can hear the fan still running. You want to make sure that all the loads are off, and there's no loads being powered right now or during the time that you're cleaning your panels out. And if your fans are still running like mine, let it cool down. Just let the fans run, let it cool down. You're going to be fine, okay? So the first thing I'll do, though, is we can turn off the panel voltage. Even though we're not getting any voltage from the panels right now, we can go ahead and turn that off, okay? And we'll wait to turn off the other breakers until the fan stops. And next what we're going to do is we have screws on the side of these panels, little Phillips head, that we can take everything apart. Now, I've already taken most of the screws out just to save a little bit of time, but we'll go ahead and get started on the rest. Let's go ahead and check it out, you guys. Okay, so while the fan kind of winds down, we'll go ahead and start popping some of these screws out. Now, I actually have all the screws off of the panel cover right here, so that's an easy fix. But of course, we're going to fasten it down when we're done. Now, as you can see, or hear, actually, is that the fans have now shut off. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to shut down the breakers from the battery right there. Okay, this is already off, and this is doing absolutely off right now. Okay, so everything is off. We're also going to go ahead and turn off the breaker right here, or there's a switch right in here. Now, as I mentioned before, you know, this works for the Midnitesolar MN3024, the do-it-yourself line. It also works for the EcoWorthy 3000 watt 24 volt all-in-one do-it-yourself line. Also the Renogy 48 volt 3500 watt do-it-yourself line. And all the SRNE do-it-yourself line along this model anyways, and more. It's just a really common controller. Every company's got their own little tweaks and they're rebranded. Honestly, they're good controllers though. This thing works. It's a workhorse. So we'll go ahead and get along. We got everything shut down. We'll get the panels popped off, and we'll start cleaning it up and get the dust out, okay? Okay, so then this whole panel, once you get the screws out, it just pulls straight out like that. And you can see it's got a top on it, and it's actually still connected right there at the coil and whatnot, or the circuit board going to the panel. So what we're going to do is just find a way to secure this so that's a little bit out of our way right now. I just happen to have something up here I think we can work with. So I'll go ahead and punch that in right there. Now this has been going for about 3 months now, and I haven't cleaned it. I'm going to try to get a closer look, zoom in on it with you guys so you can see how dirty it really is and why this is important. Why is it important? Well, because dirt, when it accumulates on circuit panels and breakers and stuff like that, it causes them to heat up. Heat is electronics' enemy. So let's take a look at it, okay? Okay, so here's a shroud around the fan. You can just see the dust built up on that. And I tell you what, it's going to be built up all around that circuit board also, but especially down through where the the fans are drawing this air down through this clear plastic shroud, and then it dumps it right into the circuit panel or the circuit breaker box. And it's kind of hard to see here, but you know, we've got a good layer of dust here in the circuit panel breaker, or the circuit breaker panel itself. We also have like some filters here on the side. They're pretty dirty also. Now I cleaned them out last week actually. I was like, whoa, they were super dirty, almost plugged up, and it's really important to have proper airflow. So for this little task here, to get the circuit board itself, I actually like to use canned air. They sold me scented. I'll have a beautiful smelling inverter now, but okay, so I like to use the canned air for the circuit board, mainly because there's no water content in it. I'll do some rough blowing out of the circuit panel or the breaker panel, the E panel as Midnitesolar calls it, with my compressor, but it'll be quick and, you know, it's a little bit more moisture tolerant than the actual circuits, you know, the transistors and your MOSFETs and, you know, resistors, all that stuff. So let's go ahead and get started on that and see what we can come up with, guys. Okay, so on the shroud itself, it actually has some screws that are screwed through the clear plastic shroud that hold it into place. We're going to go ahead and undo those screws and pull that out, and then we're going to blow everything out, okay? And it's super important that you get everything back where it goes. You can see we have our ground coming straight from the PV wire here actually, and it goes right to the heat sink on top of that, well, top of that heat sink obviously. But we want to make sure everything gets back into place. So we'll go ahead and just start unscrewing some of this stuff. That's why it's so important to turn everything off. Just make sure you got a dead board here, you know what I mean? Oh, that's cool. It's got like a little fan up there to cool down your MOSFETs. These MOSFETs tend to get warm. They want to burn out. That's pretty nifty. I wonder if I got to check the EcoWorthy, see if it has the same thing going on. Just let that hang over here for a moment. Scented, fresh. Oh yeah, you can see the dust flying out. Hit these filters from the back side. Since we're inside, we'll just get them from the inside out for now. Oh yeah, you can see them coming clean out there. Okay, so I've got the plastic shroud cleaned. I've got everything blown out. Things I want to do before I put the shroud back into place is go ahead and tighten up these two, make sure they're nice and snug, our positive and negative lead from the batteries themselves. Okay, it just makes it easier while the plastic's out of the way, the shroud's out of the way. And then also take note that when the shroud is going back in, to make sure it's not caught up in the fan, because if the fan's not working, then what'll happen is it's going to throw up an air and it could potentially overheat, okay? And then also we want to make sure that our PV ground is grounded back to the heat sink up on this heat sink right here, and then we get our other auxiliary fan here for our MOSFETs mounted in place to cool this down and also keep the MOSFETs cool, because you know the MOSFETs are an important part of the inverter, and we'll go over that in another video. Okay. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, so I made a little boo-boo. So there's some torque specifications for the lugs going into the circuit board there. I didn't even meet those specifications because I felt like it was too tight, and I'll show you what lugs I'm talking about. Those lugs right there, actually, are right there. And I don't know if you guys can see it right now, but I actually broke one off. So there's a bolt on that one, and you can see the stud to the bolt right there is still in there, but the head of it broke off. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try and fix it. So I've got a little EIoT there. It's kind of a reverse thread tap, and I'm going to drill a hole in that stud with my drill, and I'm going to use a proper sized drill bit and see if I can back that screw out, and then we'll find another one to put in. Ouch, that sucks, but it happens. So let's go ahead and fix it. Okay, so I fixed that lug. Basically, I have to take responsibility for it, even though I may have misunderstood the torque specifications for that particular lug. I don't think I did, but I may have, and I remember commenting on it thinking this is way too tight, and I backed off. But it was already ready to snap, and I'm glad I caught it now, because if it would have broken, if that lug would have, for vibration or whatever, would have actually, the head would have broken off of it, we would have had a probable malfunction and potentially a fire. But it broke now during cleaning, and that just points out why maintenance is so important. What I used was a screw extractor or an EIoT. So I drilled it out first, and I used the EIoT or screw extractor, whatever you want to call it, and I backed it out. Had to use a wrench at first just to kind of get it and then it was all by hand. I just happened to have all of these things available to me, including a new bolt that would work and go in there with a lock washer and everything. And now we've got a good tight fit on this cable, and I am feeling pretty golden about it. So we're going to go ahead and start putting it back together, get the shroud back in place and make sure it's not hitting the fans. And then we're going to go ahead and make sure our ground wire from the PV panels is connected in a proper spot. And then we got the fan over here connected over to this heat sink and the MOSFETs below it, so that way we keep those cool. Okay, let's go ahead and get at her, you guys. Okay, so at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to check all the tightness on our lugs over here for our AC in and AC out, and also our PV in. And then at that point, we're going to do a visual inspection, make sure we've got everything back into place, and then we're going to go ahead and put the cover back on, okay? Okay, so as you can see, like quite a few of those were actually loose. Loose from the factory and loose on my install initially, because wires tend to move around, they tend to settle in, and then they actually need to be tightened up over time. So we got some good solid tensile strength on those now, or compression, whatever you want to call it. And I think that we are ready to get the panel back on, and then we'll move down to checking all of these wires here. We actually will let's just do those wires now. Okay, so I've already torqued these into place. I'm just going to take my driver here, go along. I'm going to check for loose connections. I'm going to give her some good old-fashioned, just make sure she's good and snug, and kind of move forward from there. Make sure everything's good to go in the circuit breaker panel. Okay, so as you can see, a lot of those had loosened up over the last 3 months. So just another very important aspect of doing your maintenance, so that way things kind of build up. Now at our 6-month interval, we'll take all this apart a little bit. We'll check and make sure we don't have any corrosion stuff in it, but we're only 3 months in, so we'll go ahead and roll with this. And last 2 things I got to do is just check the tightness on the lugs up here, and I think we'll be golden. Okay, so we went ahead and went through, we tightened up everything in there, or tightened it up more, checked it, retightened it. A lot of them were loose, not loose, but they needed to be snugged up, so to speak. And now we're going to put the breaker panels back on. I think before I do though, well, we'll put the cover plate back in place, and then I'm going to go ahead and get a load going, just make sure everything's working okay. All right. Seems like so far everything's kind of turning on okay. Okay, while that boots up, I'm going to go ahead and go turn a load on and get things going. Okay, so I got a load going, and you can hear that the fans have clicked on, and there's no obstruction, there's no airs. We'll go ahead and pop the cover off really quick and just take a look at the fan for the MOSFETs and the heatsink that the MOSFETs are attached to. Man, just make sure it's spinning also, because that one is critically important. Those things will catch on fire if things aren't set up right. MOSFETs, they'll catch on fire. Take a look here. Oh, yep, I can feel it spinning. Yeah, we're in good shape here. You can feel the air coming out the bottom. Now I know that you guys can't see it, but before up here in the display, there was dust that had settled in there, and it was kind of obscuring the screen a little bit. You could kind of see it like a clouding effect, and it's all cleaned out now, so it looks beautiful. Okay, so that is how you get around that. Next we'll move on to checking the batteries. Okay, so for battery maintenance, one of the things I want to point out is if you're using your ratchet from your socket set, make sure that you have the handle insulated. It's super important if it's not insulated already. Accidents can happen relatively quickly. You can damage batteries, heat things up. I've welded stuff together on accident. So now, basically, like for my ratchet and some extensions and stuff like that, I just took one of my old Craftsman's here, and I picked up some heat shrink there at Harbor Freight, and I went ahead and just put some heat shrink on there. It kind of wraps them over the end there. I don't know if we can zoom in on that or not. Kind of wraps them up over the end there, and use my heat gun to shrink it up, so that way I could reduce the risk of arcing and shorting out the battery circuit. So let's go ahead and just take a look down here. This is just going to be a brief overview of what I did and how I go about it. So you can see in my battery compartment here, I've got my on-off switch. It's unfused right now, and I'm actually waiting for a new A&L fuse to come in. I gave up my other A&L fuse with my last system, which I sold. So basically what I do here is I go through and I check all the terminals. I check them for tightness. On the Renogy shunt, I go ahead and I pop that cover off and I check those bolts. On my Spartan on-off, I take that apart and check those nuts on the lugs there. And of course on the bus bars themselves, I check all that. So I check everything down here, make sure it's snug and tight and there's no visible corrosion. At the 6-month interval, again, I will physically take everything apart and take a look and make sure there's no corrosion and clean everything up. And we'll have a video on that in the future. I am going to switch a lot of stuff out down there with some new battery packs, a new configuration, the Victron Smart Shunts going back in, along with some other implements to keep the battery compartment warm during the winter time. So that'll be a whole other video. It's in my link if it's already up. If it's not up, it's not my link yet. But let's go ahead and kind of do a summary on all this. Okay, so there it is, back together. We did a lot of good things. We caught a lot of things that I'm glad we caught, emphasizing and reinforcing why this is so important. What is so important? Do your maintenance every 3 months. I mean, there's little things you check every month, and we'll go over that in the summary. But these big checks every 3 months is my suggestion, and every 6 months you do a little bit more. Okay, so that's kind of like the low and dirty, the quick and dirty of cleaning panels, doing some maintenance, making sure everything's clean, the lugs are tight. You can see why it's important. I had a lug that was broken from the positive terminal of the battery and where it feeds into the lug of the controller itself. It was ready to break. I'm really glad that I did the maintenance and caught it. And there was also some other things that I caught a couple weeks ago that just seemed to kind of pop loose. There's certain things, certain components that I've utilized here that I'm not strictly happy with. I do believe I have them in good working order now. One of them being the Midnite, one of them being the Midnite bus bars, the MBBS or whatever they are. They're a little bit on the clunky side for putting together, and they have to all fit together in a certain way so that they don't come apart and then the whole bus bar comes out of the carriage. I don't like that. I would rather, I like the fact that they have a cover, but I don't like the fact that that cover is part of the system to hold the bus bar itself to the carriage. I think that it should be held to the carriage independently of the cover itself. Basically what had happened, and if you look back in one of my other videos when I wired up this circuit breaker panel, that I was having some real difficulty with the bus bars themselves inside of the circuit breaker panel, and that had happened after install, and it was up and running, I think just from basic vibration and stuff. One of the covers had come off of the bus bar from the negative terminal coming from the batteries. It came off, and it was getting closer, it looked like, to the positive terminal. It could have been an epic fail, epic short, the whole 9 yards. Just not a real big fan now. Once it's all put together correctly, it seems to be okay, but I still don't fully trust it. So we'll be moving on in the future to probably a different E-panel that I'm designing myself, and also different bus bar system. You'll see all about that in one of my upcoming videos if you haven't seen it already and it's not already up. So things I want to touch on, make sure that you blow out behind the screen. Where the LED monitor is up here. It's really important you get that dust out of there. Make sure your shroud is where it's supposed to be, that clear plastic shroud on the inside to help funnel the air from the fans. Make sure that that's all set up correctly and it's not hindering the fans, because this unit will throw up an error saying fan failure or something like that. I forget what it is, and it's really simple to get that fan kind of caught up in the, or the shroud kind of caught up in the fans, and then it doesn't work properly, and it's critically important for cooling. I've got some links down below to different things I've purchased off of Amazon that I've used here. Also different links to other videos that you may use as a reference to the cleaning of this. So it is time consuming. I gotta say that this is a weekend project sometimes, you guys, and but it's got to be done, otherwise you could have an epic failure. Oh, the thing I wanted to point out while cleaning out the panels in there is that every single screw on the circuit breakers, even though I had them torqued to spec, had loosened up over 3 months. The wires compress, things happen, yada yada yada. It's just really important to do this. So anyways, she's in really good shape now. I'm glad I did the maintenance, and you should do your maintenance too, because when you're done, it's pretty freaking awesome, dudes.